Spider-Man's journey into the MCU wasn't easy. There was studio drama, rewrites, and power struggles. But Marvel made it happen, and the story behind it is wild. Stick around to find out how Spider-Man made his debut in Civil War. And don't forget to check the description for the question of the day. I want to hear what you guys think is your favorite Marvel movie. To explain how Spider-Man made his way into the MCU, we first need to go back to January 14th, a few months before The Winter Soldier released. Marvel was so impressed with how good the movie looked that they signed on Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFarlane and the Russo brothers to direct and write the next Captain America movie. But what should have been the ending was actually just the beginning. Okay, so before we continue, let's take a quick moment to talk about the original Civil War script and how it connects to the movie we all know and love. Interestingly enough, the first script still had a major comic book storyline, but instead of Civil War, they chose the Mad Bomber storyline and would have turned into a zombie-like third act, and also included Baron Zemo, who carried over to the new Civil War script. This is where things get interesting. You see, while Marvel was hard at work on the script, DC announced their plans for Batman vs Superman, and Kevin Feige knew the perfect way to blow DC out of the water, and went to the writer's office to ask if they could redo the script with the Civil War storyline, and said to the writers, 2 words: Civil War. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFarlane were up to the challenge, but changing the story came with a whole new problem that only Kevin Feige could solve. Iron Man was originally going to have a very small role in this movie, as it was still considered a Captain America movie. However, when Robert Downey Jr. read the script, he wanted a bigger role. Kevin Feige thought it was a great idea, but he needed to convince his boss, the Marvel CEO, Ike Perlmutter. After he heard Feige's request for a bigger role, he wanted the team to write Iron Man out of the script and have the movie focus on Hulk versus Captain America. Things kept getting worse, and Perlmutter and his creative team kept wanting more changes, and the Russo brothers threatened to quit, saying this is not the movie they wanted to make. Eventually, it got so bad that Feige went to the head of Disney, Bob Iger, to tell him that they needed to get Perlmutter out of the picture. Iger knew how valuable Feige was, and decided to fire Perlmutter and his creative team, giving Feige complete creative control, and would instead report to Alan Hawthorne, the Disney studio chief. Okay, so now that we got all this set up, let's finally talk about how Spider-Man found his way. Sony was already hard at work on The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and expanding the Spider-Man franchise. After The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperformed, Amy Pascal noticed how popular Marvel was and how Sony was struggling to make Spider-Man popular again. Sony decided to join forces with Marvel to help them make The Amazing Spider-Man 3. When Amy Pascal asked Feige, he did not like this idea and told her that Sony will never be able to do a good job, and that the only way it will work is if his team at Marvel make the movie. Pascal was furious with this accusation, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that he was right. Pascal reluctantly agreed to let Marvel make Spider-Man, but unfortunately, as talks began, they couldn't come to an agreement, and yet again, the script had to be reworked so that Tony goes to San Francisco to recruit Scott Lang instead. Eventually, Sony and Marvel would come to an agreement, and the Scott recruitment part was given to Cap instead, and The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was cancelled and was rebooted with Spider-Man. Another problem came up when it was time for casting, as both studios wanted a different actor to play the main role. Tom Holland was Marvel and the Russo brothers' first choice due to how they thought he would play the perfect actor to be a relatable teen. This, however, made Sony very nervous. Marvel needed to keep bringing Tom back for multiple auditions to essentially force Sony to hire him. In the end, it came down to Tom Holland and Charlie Rose. However, after one last audition with Chris Evans, even Sony couldn't deny how perfect Tom Holland was for them. In the end, Spider-Man made his grand debut, and everyone agreed that Tom Holland was indeed the perfect Spider-Man.